Please welcome three-time World Touring Car Champion Andy Priaulx and eight-time Le Mans winner Tom Kristensen.
Hello, mate. How are you?
You all right?
Yeah.
Hello again. Hello again. You sit here. Nice to meet you.
I described you both as phenomenally successful and very nice chaps. And you've got to be nice these days, haven't you? You've got to go about it in a nice way, otherwise you don't get anywhere. Do you find?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, motor racing is a very small world, and you know, you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way back down. So yeah, I mean, it's all about representing the brand as well, and yeah, you have to just, well, it's just either in your nature or it's not. You know, I like being nice to people. I enjoy people's company, and yeah, that's the way I go about my my career.
You've been with BMW for a number of years, and Tom, you've been with Audi for a long time. Was it important very early on with those deals to really kind of toe the line?
I think
it pays off, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's important to have good relationships, and not only have you got to be good in the car, which is the most important bit, but also you've got to be able to work with the team. You've got to be able to work with the BMW representatives, the engineers, and of course have relationships as well on the business level. So yeah, I've always managed myself. I've never had a manager, so I've always had to do my own business dealings. So it's important to build relationships and start them off in a positive way. And of course, every now and again you go through tough times, but you learn from those. And if you deal with it in an optimistic and positive way, in a fair way, then your career should be longer than if you're aggressive and short term.
TK, you've been with Audi for a decade, and it hasn't done you any harm, has it?
No, I absolutely love it. But I mean, the thing is that it's when you like it, you respect people, and you know what you would like to achieve. And if you can get the same back from the people you are competing against, the people you are working against, or will, then it's this is really nice. But still, as a racing driver, when it comes down to the point, when you take the helmet on, nobody can see the smile anyway. There you can be obviously aggressive, but I mean, as long as the helmet comes off, and when you have the talks, discussions with your fellow competitors, it's quite important that the respect is there, and obviously you're open and honest. And in that sense, there are different drivers in that sense, but I mean, I get on pretty well with most of the drivers I've competed against.
Do you find sometimes that the way you have to conduct yourself off track as an ambassador for the sport and for a manufacturer is a distraction for the pure need to drive?
No, I think it's more difficult when you are a young driver who is fast in karting and you want to go into racing. There's a little bit more demand on proving yourself. I must admit that over the years, I'm privileged to be in motorsport, and particularly with Audi for, as you said, over a decade. And in that sense, I feel maybe a little bit more. I feel my career has been valuable. I feel in that sense that I have something to give back to the sport. I like to be around the sport, and it's a passion for me. And in that sense, I probably think a little bit more about how I you can say, behave or perform outside of the car, as I did when I was a crazy youngster who wanted to prove myself. And then it's not about the chances or aggressive you go on track. That's still more or less the same, but it's a little bit more the approach you do when you're outside of the car.
Let's recap a little bit on 2010, Andy, with you first. World Touring Car Championship with BMW again. Lots of wins, another competitive effort from you.
Yeah, I was really happy with my season this year. I mean, to win 6 races in an environment that was, well, we weren't at our best. BMW and the whole package just wasn't where we wanted it to be. I had the most wins I've ever had in a season. It goes pretty unnoticed because at the end of the day I didn't win the championship, which is obviously the ultimate goal. But away from that, I've had some great races as well with BMW and the GT car. And yeah, overall it's been a fantastic season, and I've enjoyed it a lot. I mean, particularly winning 6 races in World Touring Car. I had a really quick teammate, Augusta Farfus, and you know, he was keeping me on my toes. But overall, I would say that, you know, it was a very positive year for me. BMW enjoyed the results and the success, and that's the most important thing.
There's been quite a lot of sniping in World Touring cars over regulations and who's doing what and who's allowed to do this, that and the other. Does it detract at all?
I think so. I mean, this year was really hard. I mean, going to Japan with a chance to be world champion, having, let's say, worked technically on a package since Brands Hatch, having the sequential gearbox in the privateer car and then improving that gearbox, making it available for us in Japan, having the stewards accept the gearbox as legal, that race with the car, gain some points, to then be excluded a week later through allegedly not being legal, was a very strange environment, and that was a nasty way to end the season. But I think if you've had a good year from your own personal point of view, you've driven at your best, you've achieved as much as you can from the package, that's all you can do as a driver. The rest is it was technical, and I think it's always going to be hard to balance front and rear wheel drive cars, and especially if you work well on the political side, you can maybe gain some extras. And I must say that both Chevy and Seat over the last few years have been very strong in that area. And of course, racing a turbo diesel is always going to be hard to beat in a normally aspirated car. And the same goes this year with the Chevy. It was a very strong package, but taking that into consideration, Ivan was a really good driver this year. He drove really strong, and of course, Chevy gave him the best car. So well done to them.
Fans don't want to leave a racetrack at the end of the day thinking that X has won, and then a week later read on the internet or in the press that Y has actually won. It shouldn't first past the post and all that.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the nature of the game that we're in. We have stewards for a reason, and it sometimes gets legal, especially at this level with manufacturers wanting to achieve a success for their brand. They have to make sure that they're on the limit, because if you're not on the limit, you're slow. And sometimes these decisions go against you. But I must say that this is the first time in my career that I've had this situation. The fact that I lost a world title over it, well, we can all argue that out. At the end of the day, I was the underdog fighting for the championship. I wasn't in a strong position to win the championship, but I had a chance. And as long as there's a chance, there was an opportunity to win. And I proved that in the past it's possible.
Well, you won 3 on the trot, so that's more than enough. Don't be greedy. Tom, 2010 Audi, a 1-2-3 at Le Mans. Not the right result for your car, but again, another tour de force from Audi at Le Mans.
Yes, 2010 was obviously, as we approached Le Mans, Peugeot were very, very strong, and they hammered down in qualifying, where we were a little bit off of the pace over one lap, and that brings a little bit into, again, the open cars, the closed cars in that sense, whereas we usually in the races are coming back in performance due to faster pit stops. This has been sort of neglected the last 2 years because of the different regulation. So it was really an uphill struggle, but we did the best to our maximum, and obviously Peugeot had a lot of problems during the race. So if you've asked me on Thursday before if we would have cleaned out the podium, I would not have answered the way we actually ended up finishing, and making 1, 2, 3 against the strong Peugeots were for sure not what we expected, but it was what Le Mans is all about, is to do the best job you can over a very long time.
The Audi Peugeot needle in sports cars is really exciting. It sort of reminds me of in the 1950s you had Ferrari and Aston Martin. In the 1980s, Jaguar and Porsche. The battle's really good, isn't it? And it's always very close wherever you guys are up against each other.
For sure, those two manufacturers, we have worked really hard on optimizing everything, and that is obviously from the cars, the regulations, the tires, and obviously the driver lineup. But I mean, you can also look at things like Aston Martin is coming with a new car this year. You see the Toyota is involved with the Rebellion. There's a lot of things happening in prototypes, which is really exciting. But yes, 2010, the fastest car over one lap was a Peugeot. Audi won, and this year it's new. We are building new cars. It's the biggest regulation change in over 10 years. And obviously, as we talked earlier on, it's a little bit about downsizing and getting the efficiency out of a smaller engine types. For the aerodynamic, you need a closed car to retain the top speeds, but also the smaller fuel tanks means that you really narrow down the pit stops. You have to narrow down the pit stops, and all in all, it looks like for a very exciting 2011 Le Mans.
I've just realised I perhaps shouldn't have put your chairs quite so close together. I'm thinking, who remembers what happened at Le Mans in June between these two? Who'd like to tell the people, the nice people at home, who what happened? It's funny now.
Well, I don't think that will ever be funny for both of us because it was a terrible situation. I mean, Tom and I are very close friends, as is Alan McNeish as well. And
did you say were?
No, we are very close friends. I mean, since that event, we've done several events together. Went to Copenhagen, to Tom's hometown, and enjoyed the historic Grand Prix. And also we did the Race of Champions together. But sure, I mean, Le Mans was an awful experience for me. It was my first time. I was very, let's say, excited about going to Le Mans. It's something I've always wanted to do. And it started badly simply because we weren't competitive enough. And it ended badly because I was sat in the forest, having been involved in one of the most controversial incidents in the race. At that time, I didn't know that it was Tom and Alan and their car. But I just was hoping it wasn't. And for sure, it was an awful situation. I was arriving at Porsche curves, doing 35 miles an hour with literally 3 wheels on the car, 1 wheel hanging off. And I placed the car, it seems, in the wrong position. And Tom was the result in that accident. It was a really tough situation for both of us because the approach speed was so high. You know, Porsche curves is a long, long corner. I saw Tom in my mirrors. Doug Bell was ahead. He was on the left-hand side. I made a call, and unfortunately, it drew Tom off. And you know, I went to see him immediately after the event, and we sorted it because we're close friends, and I've always been very honest, you know. And I have to say that I'm a Le Mans rookie, and I took the responsibility. But it's just a shame that it ended in that way. So I want to go back to Le Mans in the future, hopefully this year, and make amends.
That was a very honest and decent appraisal of what happened. I feel really guilty for bringing it up now. But it's the nature of Le Mans, Tom, isn't it? The speed differences between the prototypes and the GT cars is massive. And the race is so fast.
It's the nature of Le Mans. But, I mean, getting back to what you just said, I mean, I feel it's also respect between drivers in this sense. And it seems like the drivers there, it brings the best out of them. And that means, first of all, in performance, but also in things like that. I think this is really, really nice, and it's not every day you see a driver saying that he's a part of something like that. Actually, he can mention as well, we went around the track jogging before the race with McNeish as well, and we were talking about the whole circuit. And to be honest, I had a very fortunate debut at Le Mans, and I mean, I feel very sorry for Andy, the debut he had in this sense, and I'm sure that he will come back and he will do really well, because competitive he certainly was. But the problems which arise obviously turned out bad for both of us, but it didn't touch anything with our friendship. Actually, he said he met me, yeah, but he actually called me during the night at Le Mans. And then we had a talk about that. But it is Le Mans. Always expect the unexpected. So you can also put it towards me. I didn't expect that, but I should have. So it's also always a combination of factors. But the speed differentials between cars, and obviously in these circumstances, can create anything. You just have to get on with it.
The fact is that Tom would have been a 9 times Le Mans winner, and Alan would have won his 3rd Le Mans. Yeah. So it's a tough call.
You never know, do you?
What I do now is we've raced together now. Well, raced in the same race in Atlanta this year, last year, sorry. And what I do now is I don't see Tom before the race. I don't walk the track with him. I just want to see him after the race, and that's the only time I want to see him. So we keep it that way from now on.
Well, we're glad you've kissed and made up. We've got to let you go. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, please, for Andy Priaulx and Tom Kristensen.
Thank you.